What if the United States stopped supporting Israel and Ukraine? Imagine a world where, by the end of 2025, the United States ceases all funding and military support for two of its most strategically significant allies, Israel and Ukraine. Such a policy decision would represent a dramatic shift in U.S. foreign policy, potentially redefining the political and military dynamics in the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and beyond. For decades, U.S. aid to Israel and Ukraine has been driven by strategic interests and ideological alignment. But what happens if this support is suddenly withdrawn? How would these nations adapt? How would rival powers respond? And how might this reshape America's global influence? In this video, we'll break this down into three main areas: the impacts on Israel, Ukraine, and the broader role of the U.S. on the global stage. By exploring these questions with nuance and logic, we aim to inform and spark constructive policy debate. First, a bit of historical context. The U.S. has been a steadfast supporter of Israel since its founding in 1948. American financial aid has primarily gone towards bolstering Israel's defense capabilities and ensuring its security in a volatile region. Israel receives approximately $3.8 billion annually from the U.S., much of it in the form of military assistance. Beyond funding, Israel enjoys unmatched access to cutting-edge U.S. defense technologies, making it a dominant military power in the Middle East. In Ukraine, U.S. support has surged since the 2022 Russian invasion. Washington has committed tens of billions of dollars in military and humanitarian aid, providing weapons, training, and financial resources. This assistance has strengthened Ukraine's resistance against Russia and sent a message of deterrence to Moscow. These partnerships serve broader strategic goals: securing regional allies, countering adversaries like Russia and Iran, and maintaining a global image of strength and reliability. But if this aid stops, what happens next? If the United States were to stop supporting Israel, the immediate consequences would be severe. Israel's economy is heavily intertwined with U.S. aid, particularly its military sector. Losing $3.8 billion annually would create a significant financial gap, forcing the Israeli government to reallocate resources or face security vulnerabilities. Without U.S. funding, Israel would have to rely solely on its domestic budget for defense spending. This could leave the nation exposed to threats from Iran, Hezbollah, and other adversaries in the region. In such a scenario, Israel might need to resort quickly to regional diplomacy or limited military operations to stabilize threats. It's worth considering how Israel might adapt. Known for its technological prowess and innovation, Israel could focus on developing more cost-efficient defense systems domestically. Additionally, Israel has historically been resourceful in managing challenges, which might prompt a renewed emphasis on domestic production and collaboration with private industries. While possible, this transition would take time and likely involve significant trade-offs. A loss of U.S. support might push Israel to seek new allies, perhaps courting partnerships with nations like China or Russia. However, such alliances could come with strings attached, potentially compromising Israel's independence on key policies. Moreover, some of Israel's neighboring Arab states, which have cautiously pursued closer ties through the Abraham Accords, may reevaluate their approach without U.S. mediation acting as a balancing force. The ripple effects would likely extend beyond Israel itself. The Middle East is one of the world's most geopolitically volatile regions, and the absence of U.S. support for Israel could destabilize the fragile network of alliances and deterrence. Would this lead to an emboldened Iran, shifts in Arab-Israeli relations, or a breakdown in coordination among regional powers? The answers depend heavily on how Israel chooses to respond. Turning to Eastern Europe, let's examine Ukraine, a country still grappling with the aftermath of Russia's invasion in 2022. U.S. assistance has been critical to Ukraine's ability to withstand Russian military aggression. If this backing ends, the outlook for Ukraine's sovereignty and for Eastern Europe as a whole becomes far more precarious. Without U.S. military aid and weaponry, Ukraine's ability to sustain its defense will be significantly weakened. While European countries have provided their own levels of support, the U.S. has been the cornerstone of Ukraine's military resistance. Losing that lifeline could force Ukraine into a defensive posture, limiting its ability to recover lost territories or deter further Russian incursions. In the absence of the United States, Europe would face increased pressure to step up its aid to Ukraine. While nations like Poland and the Baltic states have been staunch supporters, broader European unity on defense spending has historically been inconsistent. A fragmented response could embolden Russia to push further into Eastern Europe, testing NATO's resolve and raising fears of a broader regional conflict. It's not hard to imagine how this scenario might be perceived in Moscow. A U.S. withdrawal could be seen as a sign of waning Western resolve, encouraging Russia to expand its ambitions further. This could involve not only further aggression toward Ukraine, but also increased meddling in Moldova, Georgia, or even NATO member states with significant Russian minorities, such as Estonia or Latvia. Beyond external threats, losing U.S. support could destabilize Ukraine's already strained economy. Reconstruction efforts, humanitarian needs, and political stability all depend on continued international backing. Without it, Ukraine might face domestic unrest, leading to weakened governance and a reduced ability to defend itself long-term. The absence of U.S. support wouldn't just affect Israel and Ukraine. It could ripple across entire regions, reshaping alliances and rivalries in unforeseen ways. In the Middle East, regional powers like Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey may step into the vacuum. Iran might exploit a weakened Israel to assert dominance, while Saudi Arabia and Turkey may increase their own military spending to counterbalance shifts in power. Furthermore, diminished U.S. engagement could complicate peace negotiations, leaving long-standing conflicts unresolved. The power dynamics in Eastern Europe would also shift considerably. European reliance on the U.S. for defense would be thrown into stark relief, potentially triggering debates on increasing EU-wide military funding. On the other hand, nations like Poland and the Baltic states may find themselves isolated, further heightening tensions in the region. One consistent theme is the likely rise of rival powers. Russia would undoubtedly seize on these developments to expand its influence in Eastern Europe, while China could look to strengthen partnerships in the Middle East, filling the void left by America. This would effectively increase the geopolitical clout of these nations, potentially creating a new era of multipolarity in world politics. Shifting focus back to the U.S., what does this scenario mean for America's global role and domestic priorities? Cutting ties with Israel and Ukraine could signal a broader retreat from international engagement. This may lead allies across the globe to question the reliability of U.S. commitments. Nations such as Japan, South Korea, and Germany could begin exploring their own security arrangements, reducing their dependency on American support. On the domestic front, withdrawing from costly foreign commitments might free up financial resources for pressing domestic issues such as infrastructure, education, or healthcare. Supporters of an America First philosophy argue that prioritizing internal needs over international entanglements is both practical and overdue. However, such policy shifts come with risks. Diminished global influence could impact the U.S. economy indirectly through lost trade partnerships, increased geopolitical instability, and reduced leverage in international negotiations. In essence, long-term economic and strategic costs could outweigh short-term savings. The decision to withdraw aid raises complex ethical questions. Do powerful nations like the U.S. have a moral obligation to support smaller allies in existential crises, even if doing so doesn't yield direct benefits? On the strategic front, abandoning key allies could create a vacuum that emboldens rival nations, leading to instability and potentially greater costs in future interventions. It's worth considering alternative perspectives. Supporters of withdrawing aid argue that nations like Israel and Ukraine should be more self-reliant and that American taxpayers shouldn't shoulder the burden indefinitely. Conversely, many argue that investing in allies ensures long-term stability and prevents the need for costlier interventions down the road. One possible compromise could involve scaling back aid rather than halting it entirely. This would allow America to reduce its financial footprint while still maintaining its influence abroad. Another possibility is strengthening multilateral partnerships, encouraging other nations to share the burden of supporting allies like Israel and Ukraine. The decision to end U.S. support for Israel and Ukraine is far from simple. As we've explored, the consequences would likely ripple through the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and the broader global order. Nations, alliances, and individuals would face tough choices in adapting to the new reality. Ultimately, this scenario raises deeper questions about America's role in the world. Should it prioritize domestic needs or continue to act as a global leader, ensuring stability and security for allies? Striking the right balance between these priorities is crucial for shaping the future of U.S. foreign policy. What are your thoughts on this complex issue? Weigh in below and join the discussion. As global challenges grow increasingly interconnected, conversations like this are more important than ever. Like and subscribe for more from History Twist.